Logan Christopher is the CEO of Lost Empire Herbs. He is a performing strongman working to help people realize peak performance. Welcome to the show, Logan.
Thanks for having me, George.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, I really got into strength training, not being fit or strong or anything like that. I was the proverbial 98-pound weakling growing up. Entering high school, I didn't weigh 100 pounds. But I got bitten by this bug when I really found body weight exercises and discovered that, well, I could actually become stronger and do some things that other people couldn't. So that led to kettlebells, then led to the old-time strongman, which involves things like bending horseshoes, ripping decks of cards in half. And I just had a lot of fun with this. I often say if I had to like run on a treadmill for an hour at a gym, I wouldn't want to work out either. But if I get to juggle kettlebells and lift hammers and all kinds of fun things, then it's a lot more fun for me. And in pursuing this, I was aiming to get stronger, right? So this led me into fields like mental training with neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis. It led me deep into nutrition, and that got me into the herbs in the first place. And really, just seeing the world, the chronic disease, the lack of vitality so many people have, I've made my mission to just help people become much more vital, like I have done for myself.
Nice. So you have ripped a deck of cards in half?
Yes, many, many times. In fact, just recently, a couple months ago, ripped two decks of cards in half at the same time, and that was significantly harder to do.
Yeah, probably twice.
Yeah, more than twice, more about 10 times as difficult.
Well, I think that that's an amazing thing, man.
Yep.
Nice. All right. So from 98 pounds to going on this mission and journey, and I don't know how old you are, it doesn't necessarily matter, but kettlebells weren't ubiquitous back then.
No, I definitely was on the early wave of getting into them. I think I first started swinging them around, was that 2005, and went to the RKC, which was the people that led the kettlebell movement in here. Now they are quite available out there. But and with that, there's some watering down of how people use them. But overall, it's great because when I first got into fitness, I was bodybuilding at a commercial gym because that's all I knew that was out there. But really, with the internet, the explosion of information, that kind of led to people finding much more functional ways of training.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So what led you to herbs? I imagine that you went through more traditional type supplements and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely from those like attempting to bodybuild type of days, there's all kinds of creatines and different things. And I actually said to my friend one time, wow, it's like super expensive to get strong and grow muscle. And I was not really having results with any of that stuff. So for a long time, it just like, oh, all that stuff is crap. Just focus on the training. But then, as I said, it was the training that led me is like, okay, I should stop eating Hot Pockets and Cheerios and whatnot and eat a little bit healthier food. And as I learned more about nutrition, this led me to herbs. And I took a very different route than most people do. Most people will get into herbs, one, if they have like a grandma that knows something about them, or if there are some sort of disease and Western medicine is failing them, they'll start exploring these alternative routes. For me, it was all about performance. So it's like, can I take an herb that helps me to swing these kettlebells easier? And indeed, when I first experimented with the cordyceps fungus, which I was hearing about Olympic athletes using this and breaking records with it. I tried it for my workouts and I noticed my breathing was easier. I could go longer, further. So I was hooked from that get-go and then just gradually, step by step, explored this very wide range and world of herbs that is out there and available.
Well, it's extraordinary, right? You're not necessarily getting the results that you want, and so you open the aperture a little bit and you start taking cordyceps and you get a, for lack of a better term, an immediate result.
Yep. Yep. And that's a thing that I really want people to kind of get. So much of the supplement world, it's taken on faith and not necessarily religious faith, but like scientific faith. Oh, I hear this is good for me. This is supposed to help me live longer, whatnot. People take things and don't really notice any sort of benefits themselves. Which, definitely some things are more noticeable than others. But really, what I want to deliver to people is this idea of performance herbalism, which means you'll actually notice a tangible result from the herbs that you're taking. If you're not noticing that, then yeah, they can be doing things in the background. But really, that's what's going to convince people more than anything else is like, okay, I take this, I have more energy, I have less stress, my sleep is better. That is going to be the thing that really connects people to nature in this way.
Yeah, well, I think that that makes sense. It's well, there's a lot of interesting things out there, Logan, but it's interesting to me that I was recently researching just the history of prescription medicine in the United States and the direct to consumer that allowed pharma companies to advertise on television.
Yep.
And I wonder what the inflection point was when we had these homeopathic remedies, when we had a deeper understanding for the role of natural, just herbs,
Mhm.
whatever, things to help us beyond just going to the doctor and getting a prescription. And I fear that we were going to kind of lose that.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely multiple inflection points. It has been a kind of a long ride. And really what happened was, so when I talk about herbs, right? Understand that herbs were medicine for all of humanity for as long as we've been humanity, even before that, right? Different people, different areas, like the Native Americans had it, Chinese had it, Indians had it. Everyone had their system of medicine based on what is available around them. Nature really does provide in this way. It was shortly after the turn of the 20th century when the Rockefellers and Carnegies, they teamed up with Flexner, and he did looked at all these different schools of medicine. And really, what they did with this Flexner report was to say that this is the right way to do medicine and doctoring. And granted, like I mean, this is true of doctors all across time, right? They're poisoning people with mercury. They're doing excessive bloodletting. That's what killed George Washington, right? Medicine was people were oftentimes got worse with a doctor's treatment than they got better. But even in the U.S., there was all these different schools. There's the homeopaths, chiropractics. There's multiple different schools of herbal medicine. But this Flexner report, basically, and the money that was backing behind it, was able to say that this is the only right way to do it. And then a lot of that pharmaceutical medicine came from petroleum, came from oil, which Rockefeller's interests were in, and they kind of diversified there. So by kind of seizing control of it, they shuttered a whole bunch of different schools and said, this is the only right way. And they were able to reinforce this through associations such as the American Medical Association, which would literally have like the doctor's approval, and it was kind of a racket. You paid to play in these sort of things. So it was a bunch of different things like this that just kind of started the ship moving in that direction. And then just year after year, decade after decade, there was multiple of these inflection points. So for example, one of the guys that did advertising for Pfizer, he was kind of the father of pharmaceutical advertising, but this was back when it was magazines and such things like that. And his name was Arthur Saxler. He went on to found the Sackler dynasty, which went on to be the main players in the opioid crisis with
Oh, great.
OxyContin, right? So it's just interesting to see how this story unfolds over time and just recognize that. So yeah, just the further we go, the more people are trapped in the system and cannot even see outside of it. But thankfully, the system is breaking in so many ways so that lots of people are now seeing outside of it in one form or another. And I like to say pharmaceutical medicine definitely has its use. Some of the stuff is absolutely great and life-saving. A lot of it is not. There's a lot of things that should not exist, in my opinion, that cause much more damage than they provide benefit for. So really, I like to, can we synergize, get the good stuff from that? And really, Western medicine is great in acute trauma, right? If you get your arm chopped off, you don't want to see a shaman. You don't want to go to a homeopath, right? You want to have a doctor that can really handle that kind of trauma. And then, pain meds may be totally appropriate at that time. But then can we really work with healing with these other systems to address so many other things, especially chronic disease, which is a bigger killer than acute uh, infections or disease or trauma or anything like that these days. And that is where, honestly, Western medicine is not doing so well.
Yeah. Well, that was an awesome synopsis. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that you can just follow the breadcrumbs back one step and back another. And oh, look at that. There was a profit motive that was involved in all of this somehow. So, but back before there was that significant profit motive, you talked about Native Americans, the ancient Chinese, just every culture used what was available in their area to cure whatever was ailing them. So for you today, are there certain areas that you're focused on in regard to there's a problem, here is a solution when it comes to
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'll say herbs can't cure anything, right? Because of the medical model. I was just saying, like they have a monopoly on that. So really, what I like to focus on is you're supporting your health in general, and there are a variety of ways you can do this. One of the things I like about this idea of performance herbalism is one, not only can you perform better, whether that's at the gym or in your work, but by aiming for performance in a holistic way you are really aiming for prevention, right? That old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So if we're supporting our health in these bunch of ways, we're less likely to get the forms of chronic disease that come longer. So we can definitely aim for prevention. What I do at Lost Empire Herbs, our main focus is around hormone support, and this is a largely not not focused on area for many people. One of the worst things that's going on right now is the pervasiveness of endocrine disrupting chemicals in our environment. These are like BPA and other bisphenols that are in plastics, phthalates, which are anti-androgenic, which are in like air fresheners. They're really in so many different products, skincare products, plastics as well, pesticides that are used on our foods, heavy metals, fluoride, chlorine that's in our water supply. Like these are everywhere. It's in the very air that we breathe. And because of this, what we're seeing is like a 1% drop in testosterone levels per year, a 1% increase in the miscarriage rate, a 1% increase in the ED happening. 1% drop in sperm motility year after year. So that right now, like our testosterone levels as men are less than what our fathers were and less than the grandfathers before. And that's largely, yes, there are some other factors involved, but a large part is the pervasiveness of these endocrine disrupting chemicals. So a lot of what I like to focus on is hormone health because hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, there's a whole bunch of different ones in the body, but you cannot have radiant health, this ideal level of health without having great hormone health. And while there is some decline of these hormones as aging goes on, that is in some ways like a cop out. Like it's not the time itself that is the issue, but there is a lot of the just excess gain of these chemicals in our body that happens more over time. So there's a lot you can do to buck that trend of just your hormones declining over age, which is going to cause a wide variety of different symptoms and issues. So again, if you want to be like a high performing person, male or female, whatever, having that hormone health is going to be very important. So that's one of the main areas I like to focus on.
so the things that we've created to make our lives better, theoretically speaking, are in fact killing us, and a solution potentially to support our hormone health and our endocrine system health are naturally occurring herbs.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's not, the whole model of science was like, oh, these chemicals are not acutely toxic unless done at a huge level. But kind of how science looks at things is tending to not look at things long term because one, it is more difficult to do so. Then there's that whole profit motive in play. So there is this chronic subtle toxicity that just builds and builds over time that is honestly like a lot of people having infertility issues. This plays a role in cancer of all types, in diabetes, heart disease, like all the major things that are killing people these days. This is playing a role in there of this just wide variety of chemicals that are around us. So the good news is while you can't avoid this stuff completely, there's a lot you can do. One, to just like minimize your exposure, but then using something like herbs, they actually kind of build this idea of the internal armor. They're helping the body to mitigate the damage of these things, to detoxify them as well. And that's really honestly what like people need to be doing in this day and age if they want to be abundantly healthy.
So I go to your website. It's a great site, and you have a lot of products on there. As somebody who's not currently consuming herbs,
Mhm.
how do I, how do you get people to the point where I'm just introduced to this? It
Yeah.
sounds really interesting to actually understanding which one, because there's
Right.
a gap there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the average person landing on the website is like, I've never heard of any of this stuff. Where do I go from here? So we do provide a bunch of different resources. Like there's a little quiz that will ask you, what are you most interested in? Is it sleep? Is it sex? Is it energy? And from there, it'll ask you a few different questions and say, like, this may be the right herb for you. So all the herbs that we work with have been used for thousands of years, at least hundreds of years. And have this test of time. Many of them do have scientific studies behind them, some less so than others. But there is a good level of evidence, and I like to bring the modern science along with that ancient wisdom together. So let's say you're looking for energy. It's like, is this a chronic thing? Is there stress involved in there? There's a bunch of different herbs that can help with that. The adaptogen class of herbs, which the term is a bit overused these days, but essentially it is an herb that will help your body better be able to adapt to stressors. And we have all kinds of different stressors from, money, family, work, just the world at large, everything going on, right? We are living in a chronic stress society. So oftentimes something along these lines that can support the hormone system and the nervous system as well in these ways is going to help a person to better be able to handle stress, which may free up energy. So yeah, we have a bunch of different resources that can help point people in the right place. And what I like to say is that the only way you're really going to see the results is if you try things. While we're all human beings, we are kind of unique. So what works great for one person may not quite work the same for another person. So you just have to try the herbs to find out. And we have a money back guarantee on everything, 365 days. Don't need to send anything back, like because we're doing the one to many thing, right? Rather like a herbal consultant that can guide you, like, okay, this is what you need exactly. Even then, there's like feedback involved. Doesn't work for the person. It's like, okay, let's switch it up. But in this way, you can really try things and see if they work for you. And then if you get the results, great. I know you'll continue to be a customer. If not, the risk is on us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And so if I were to just go on my favorite internet site and find some kind of over-the-counter remedy or drug for testosterone support
Mhm.
versus I go and I get a naturally occurring herb to support that, what what are the differences potentially? Is
Mhm. It's a great question. So yeah, with something like testosterone replacement therapy or any sort of drug, the way I like to look at things is we know that Hippocrates quote, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food," right? So I like to think of food and medicine as on a scale. On one end, you have the, well, mostly devoid of nutrition type of food that masquerades as food for us today. On the other end, you have those pharmaceutical medicines. In between, if we think of this as a scale, there are, better quality food that's going to have more micronutrients, for instance, and we have superfoods that are going to have certain phytochemicals, a lot more of certain types of nutrients. Then we have the herbs, and if we take an herb and isolate a certain constituent of it, 25 to 30% of our pharmaceuticals comes from something natural like this, then it's often just tweaked in one way for patenting reasons. Again, the money motive involved in that. So we have this kind of scale from foods to superfoods, herbs, isolated compounds to drugs. And again, this whole scale is appropriate depending on what you're going for. But with this, we can kind of see that there are different things here. And on this side of scale with food and superfoods, like there's no risk involved really. There's no side effects to these. Of the different effects here. But the further we go on the scale with the pharmaceutical, like there's a laundry list of side effects, right? Because you have a chemical that is driving one action to try to get this one effect. But by driving that action, because biology is very complex, it can cause all these other issues going on. So when we're working with herbs, in general, there are going to be less side effects. There's not none because anything that is going to have some potency can possibly have some, but the effects are dramatically less. And in 99.9% of cases, if you stop taking it, the effects would go away, which is not necessarily the case with pharmaceuticals, right? So what I like to do is stick with this rule of thumb of doing things more natural. By doing that, you have less of a tendency for side effects. The bigger the intervention is, the more risk that is involved, right? So popping a pill is one thing. Surgery is a super huge intervention, right? Definitely has its place, but a lot of people end up going too fast to surgery, and it can have some negative effects in doing so. I mean, placebo surgeries have worked as well as surgeries in certain circumstances. Most people don't actually realize that's the case. So by going for something natural, let's say you have low testosterone or other hormonal havoc going on, can we work with something with just lifestyle interventions, supporting it with supplements and herbs? Can we get you into an ideal place with that? There are cases where definitely doing some bioidentical hormones would be warranted, but again, too many people are going too fast to there because we're only used to using doctors for things. So it's like, I have low testosterone, I'm feeling these symptoms. Younger and younger guys are doing this. And although that does work for many people, it does come with a larger list of possible side effects than it does just, working with some herbs to do the same thing. And with herbs also, they're because they're holistic, right? We're not just isolating one compound. We have 200 different compounds in there. It's typically supporting your health in a more holistic way. So you may be getting some side effects that are positive, some side benefits. Like you're taking it for one thing, then you just like, oh, this is actually helping with something I wasn't even thinking of in the first place. That's typically not going to be happening with drugs because they're so targeted at what they do.
Got it. Nice. All
Mhm.
right. Well, Logan, thank you so much for coming on. Where can
Yeah.
people learn more? Tell us how we can get started.
Yeah, so the website is lostempireherbs.com. And on that, you will really find a wealth of resources. We got blogs and videos going back years and years. There's tons of science. There's details about the herbs. There's those helpful things like wellness goals and quiz that can help point people in the right direction. I just encourage people, even if not with us, but go and try some herbs because really we have a saying, there's an herb for that, right? So whatever you're looking for, there's actually something from nature that can really support you in that endeavor.
Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Logan your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to lostempireherbs.com and check out everything that Logan's been talking about today and see if, in fact, which we all know that it is, that an ounce of prevention is worth that pound of cure. So thanks again, Logan.
Thanks, George.
Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.